Good afternoon, Dr. Folashade Adeyemo. Thank you so much for making time out today to just have this conversation with us at CRISA Africa. We're very delighted to have you here once again. How this will work today is that I'm going to read out your bio, and I think that will take a few minutes, and then afterwards we can go into the conversation if that is okay. Dr. Folashade Adeyemo is a distinguished legal academic, barrister, and senior lecturer in law at the University of Liverpool, where she also serves as an associate dean for global engagement. With over a decade of experience, she teaches various law modules, including company, banking, and commercial law. Her research focuses on banking regulations, financial crimes, and whistleblower protection in Africa. She authored Banking Regulation in Africa, The Case of Nigeria and Other Emerging Economies, and co-edited Banking Insolvency Law in Developing Economies. Her upcoming book explores financial and economic crimes in Africa. Our work has been featured in prominent publications like Business Day Nigeria, The Telegraph, Vanguard, and This Day. As a committed educator and researcher, Dr. Adeyemo strives to bring global attention to the legal challenges facing Africa, while also empowering the next generation of legal professionals. In addition to her academic work, Dr. Adeyemo is an entrepreneur and owner of Air by Nubian, a successful salon in Lagos State, Nigeria, combining a passion for business with a commitment to quality service. She continues to inspire both in the legal field and in entrepreneurship. Wow, Dr. Folashade, that's very impressive. I'm truly honored to have you here once again, and thank you for being here.
Just to say thank you very much for the invitation, and I hope that it goes well. This will be a good interview.
Can you share how you balance your role as a lawyer, a lecturer, and the owner of a successful salon in Lagos State, Nigeria?
Wow, that's a very, very loaded question. I'd probably say, just to start off with, balancing those three different areas is not easy. And I always, I'm a typical Nigerian, a typical Yoruba babe, and I always say to people, if it's easy, run them. It's not an easy task, but thank God I've been doing it. And I think one of the things that I found to be the most helpful or the most useful thing is to be able to have discipline and be able to manage my time accordingly, so that I'm able to give the best to all of those areas, give the best to my academic life, give the best to being a lawyer, give the best to being an entrepreneur. So I think having a good structure, good time management, which is not always easy, to be fair, because sometimes you find you are giving more to one and the others are suffering. So it's not always that easy or that straightforward. But I found that what has made it easy is the fact that I have passion for all of these three things. So I really love my academic life. I really love teaching. So whether it's I'm in a hall of 400 students where I'm teaching banking law, I feel that satisfaction and that satisfaction for the passion that I'm engaged in. And whether it's me being a lawyer, which I don't practice as much presently, but when I have done in the past, it's always been fulfilling for me. And then I suppose in terms of my entrepreneurship side, I've learned to delegate. And those who know me well know that delegation, because I like to have a very hands-on experience with many things, and anything that I put my hand in, that's not always easy for me to delegate to people, because I want to make sure that my customers are getting the best service ever. They're having a good experience at the salon, and what have you. But one thing I have, and I'm really grateful for, is I have a really good team. But that team has come about through a lot of training. So I feel that when you train staff in the way that you want them to present yourself, present your brand. and you share what your vision is with your team, then it's more helpful. It's more easier, if you like, for them to bring that dream to fruition for you. So yeah, I think it's not been easy, but it's something that I have strived to do. And I think delegation, time management, and structure are the key things.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very, enlightening. And to be honest, I really do think that, delegation, time management, training staff, and the support that you get is very, very crucial in running a business, especially in Nigeria.
Yes.
We can't do everything by ourselves. At some point, you have to let people do what you think they can do and then give them that feedback. Not only that help your business grow, it will also serve as a source of impact and allow people themselves to become better. That being said, Dr. Fola, could you share your journey into the field of education? What inspired you to pursue a career in the academia?
That's always an interesting one whenever I'm asked that question. And I always tell people that my goal in this life was just to marry a very rich man, be an educated housewife, and be wearing Prada. That was my aspiration in this life. But I also knew I wouldn't be that fulfilled if I did that, if I was just at home, not really doing anything. So how will I start? I guess from an early age, I knew that I would teach. I just didn't know what I was going to teach. But I think that teaching, that leadership, that entrepreneurial kind of those different attributes, I knew that they were always in me, but it was just figuring out how to get into education and how to use that to my advantage. So when I studied my undergrad, I started thinking about alternative options against being a lawyer. So I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, but I knew, I guess, in my heart that being a lawyer was not the only thing I was called to do. I knew, when it came to teaching, I would teach like in small groups. I knew I was very good at it. So I started thinking about different ways to harness that. So when I got to law school, I think it was in my second semester, my second part, what do they call this thing, bar part 2, where I had decided, I said, no, as much as I will qualify, make sure that I'm a lawyer, I want to set my heights on different things. And I like this idea of teaching. I think I'm going to do a PhD. So I applied during bar part 2. I got an unconditional offer. I got a few offers actually. And then I decided to go into the PhD. I knew that I was going to practice still, but I knew that this PhD, this idea of research, I was really interested in banking and finance at the time. And I just knew that that was the best way for me to collaborate all those ideas to be able to get to where I wanted to get to within academia. So I wouldn't say it was a straightforward journey as such. I think I knew I was going to teach, but it was just about figuring out the best way to get into academia and the steps that I needed to take to get into academia.
Okay, thank you. One thing that stands out is when you said being a lawyer is not the only thing I've been called to do. And we'll get into that in a few moments. I just need to, set the foundation for other questions. At Crystal Africa, we have our hands in a few things, alongst the SDG goals, which one of them is education and related mentorship for African youths. What do you believe are the key ingredients for an educational program that effectively nurtures future leaders?
That's a good question. I think it's important to know that there needs to be a good balance between practicality and theoretical knowledge. And I think what many educators do, or what many educators do in the classroom, is just to tell you about the theoretical side. They tell you this is the law in the books, this is how the law operates. But when it comes to the practical side, people don't really have that experience. So I think for in order to be able to shape young leaders through education and things like mentorship and what have you, I think they need to be exposed to real life instances, real life situations, real life, have the opportunity to take what they've learned from the theoretical perspective and actually apply it into the real world. And I think one of the ways that you can do this is through things like internships, work experience, giving people the opportunity to get their hands dirty, giving people the opportunity to actually take on real life tasks and build those skills from within. Because you can't really just rely on the theoretical knowledge that you have. So I think it's important about that. I think it's also important to realize that leadership is not just about education. So you can have all of the degrees in the world, but if you don't have the practical experience and you don't have an idea or an understanding of how to use that practical experience, it's only going to take you so far. So I think making sure that that practical element is also part of the program or the training is very, very important. And that practicality is what will give future leaders that confidence, if you like, to be able to go forth and to lead. But that practical experience is important.
Yes, thank you. And to be honest, just buttressing on your point, I really do think practical experience or exposure into the industry is undermined, especially in the African educational system. And that's why at CRISA Africa, as part of a component to our educational programs, we do industry exposure visits.
Okay.
Where students are allowed to go into companies to understand the various possible career prospects that those companies can deliver. And then students know that, okay, it's not just economics, it's not just medicine, it's not just law that's there. Even as an economist, I can work, in derivatives. I can work as a full-time equity consultant. I can work in capital markets and stuff like that. But a lot of students don't know all of those things, and they just have their focus on these very predictable cut out careers from day one. And going back and applying this to myself, there was a time when I was in uni, SEO Africa, I don't know if you've heard about them, came to uni once, and they were recruiting for Goldman Sachs in the UK here. They wanted students to go to Goldman Sachs on, I think they used to call it like, I can't remember, but it's like 8 weeks. Sorry?
Like a secondment.
It wasn't a secondment per se. It was just like a short internship where students would come, and that would serve as a mini interview towards getting offers in the future. And to be honest, I didn't know anything about Goldman Sachs at that point. It was all new to me. And I applied. I got series of interviews, and then I started mixing up with the people within that circle, and I started learning more about the capital market and the sort of business that Goldman Sachs does. Because I had exposure into it at that time, I was able to know that no, this is not for me. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And I was able to just cross that out of my career path. And what that has done for me, it has given me a level of certainty and confidence in what I've chosen to do over the years. And that's the same thing that CRISA Africa is clamoring for young leaders in Africa, that let's give people this exposure. There's a saying that says you cannot like what you don't know.
Of course.
You have to know something. You have to have that exposure, which you have just said about balancing practice, which is more or less like exposure, and then those theoretical knowledge that we find in the university environment. Thank you, Doctor, for that point. My next question will be, as an academic leader, how do you see the future of education evolving, particularly with the rise of digital learning and other technological advancements?
That is a slightly tricky question to answer, because not everybody will like my answer to that question. I think it's important to recognize that COVID has brought about this new way of learning. It's brought about the idea that it's not just learning in the classroom, because during that period, students were not in the classroom. They were learning on Zoom. They were learning on, Microsoft Teams or Zoho or, whichever medium was available. So I think as an educator, we have to shift our mind away from, it's not just in the lecture theatre, it's not just in the classroom. And so because of that, we need to embrace different ways that students can either assimilate knowledge or take the knowledge from you, as you're delivering the content. So that's one. The acceptance that it is not just classroom delivery. It is not just being in the lecture theatre. It's not just being in the seminar room. That's number one. I think the second is the acceptance that AI is here to stay. And it's so funny because I was at work yesterday. I was teaching a session, and one of the students said to me, "Oh, I used Chat GPT to sort out my structure for my assignment. Is that going to be a problem?" And actually, I couldn't tell her no, because number one, it was the fact that she even came and told me and was seeking that advice. There are so many students that will use AI. They will use different AI tools to do their assignments, and they have become so good. It would be even difficult sometimes for lecturers to be able to identify and say, actually, I think this is not an essay that was written by this student. I think perhaps it was written by AI. So I think it's that acceptance that AI has come to stay, and just seeing how we can also embrace it, because it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think the quality of students that we're also having now is very different from, for example, when I was at school many, many years ago. There was nothing like AI. There was nothing like that. You did your assignments, you used your normal search tools for law, your database searches. Some people, even before me, didn't even have access to these things. So I think it's just to embrace and to accept that AI has come to stay. So figure out how you can embrace and just take it on board, and also recognize that there are now different ways to deliver content to students that they can appreciate and understand that content, because the level of students, the quality of students, it's always going to evolve, it's always going to change. So I think it's that acceptance, and perhaps some colleagues within the education space generally are not ready to accept that. Some colleagues, and I'm talking about generally speaking, very set in their ways. If it's not the lecture theatre, it's not the lecture theatre. They don't want to acknowledge or appreciate anything like recording on Teams, or what do you mean I have to record this short meeting for, or this short revision session for students? Why can't they just come to class? So I think it's about, recognizing and accepting that, and also recognizing that students have different skills. Students assimilate information in different ways. I have some students where it comes to things like flowcharts, that just works better for them. So you can stand there and deliver a class for an hour, but if there is no flowcharts, it's going to be difficult for that student to assimilate. And I'm just going to touch back on this. This is why I'm not sure that people would like this answer, but that's how it is. It's also from an African perspective. I think it's also recognizing that some students within the African space actually have learning difficulties. But because of this idea of, oh, I'm an African, my mom cannot know I have ADHD, or was dyslexia, was this, was, because of that, you can't even give the students the support that they need. It might be that a student who has dyslexia would actually benefit, a group of them, it might not even be individual, that they would actually benefit from an additional top-up 20-minute recording, which captures everything that was discussed in the lecture, but would help them assimilate the information better. So it's the balance between accepting that and be willing to go out of your way to do that for that student, and also recognizing that these, I don't want to call them learning disabilities, but there are students that require extra support, more support, to be able to attain that same goal that their counterparts are also doing that. And one of the ways that can do that is through things like AI.
Someone was saying, because I was on Instagram, I think 2 days ago, and I saw this lady, she was saying, AI is not the bad guy. I am the bad guy.
It's not. But I think people fear what they don't know. So if you don't really appreciate or know what AI is, it's difficult for you to embrace it. You just think that this is a cheat tool, but you fail to see that you could see it as a cheat tool, but you could also see it as an educationally enhancing tool.
Yes, because the quality of whatever you bring up from the AI tool is also directly proportional to the quality of the person using it.
Of course.
And that's what somebody was trying to let me know. Although I'm not really, invested in this AI tool and all of that, but I actually think that it could be a good tool if it is properly, used. Going further, Dr. Adeyemo, You would agree with me that there's now something I call an unfettered access to assistive technologies and AI like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Gemini, and the likes. Would you say that these aids have deconcretized the ability of many young leaders to be ingenious, critical, and perceptive in their reasoning?
That is a very, very interesting question. I think one of the challenges with having AI is AI can do the thinking for you. You don't necessarily have to do much of the thinking yourself. So if your question is, has AI taken over students or people's ability really to think? I would say that it definitely has the power to do so. But I don't think that that's something that can be avoided. I think maybe in some careers it can be. So, for example, if you're a lawyer and you're going to Lagos State High Court, you cannot use an AI tool to write. You can probably use it to write your brief, but there will have to come a point or different points where it will require your own input. And not just your own input, your own inputs and your own kind of reasoning and understanding.
Your problem
And
solving.
sorry?
I said your
Yes,
problem
problem solving. And if you don't have those skills in you as a person, it's going to become very difficult for you to thrive in that kind of setting. So while I encourage the use of AI, and I definitely think it's a useful tool, I think that people need to be very conscious that they're not relying only on AI tools alone, and that they are still developing their own cognitive thinking skills, their own ability to reason, their own ability to look at A and B and not have to go to ChatGPT to say, what's the answer to this? That, being able to develop your own skills.
Yes.
And that's something I always try to tell my students. I'll just bring it back to the education space. That's something I always tell my students. Yes, you can use ChatGPT to actually write your assignment, and you can use it to do your coursework. You certainly can't write it in the exam, because if it's an in-person exam, which many of our exams are, you cannot use a computer there. And even if you were to use a computer, at that point, it would become obvious. So it's important for you to rely on skills that you have yourself, develop those skills, because those skills is what will help you really in the real world.
Yes, I agree completely. Since we started this conversation, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because it has exposed so many limitations in the educational system. And, you've spoken about the importance of, training, trying to be better for yourself, improving your cognitive and problem solving skills, balancing practice and theory. You've spoken about the many limitations, embracing change, evolution, practicality in educational system, especially amongst the lecturers and the institutions, embracing the new order and a lot of other things. And there's one thing we call that in CRISA, we call that, growing into transformative education in Africa. So having all those limitations and working on them, imputing the many ideas will then lead into transformative education that will deliver geometric improvements in the quality of our youth. So on the basis of that, Dr. Adeyemo, what role do you think organizations like CRISA Africa play in ensuring equitable access to transformative education in Africa?
Well, I think CRISA has a very good foundation, because it's clear that you guys can identify what the gaps are within the education system and then look for a way, if you like, or ways to try and bridge that particular gap. And I think one of the big advantages for NGOs, generally speaking, is the ability to tailor programs specifically to the community needs. So they know that this is what this community needs. These are the gaps. These are the issues we need to address. And then you can tailor your programs and tailor your what you provide to those kinds of communities. So things like, so I think at CRISA, you guys do a lot of mentorship, leadership. Those are the things that the youth in Africa really, really need. So I think that that's useful stroke helpful. And I think that's how organizations like CRISA Africa can actually enhance their role, if you like, in that particular space.
Okay, thank you. Do you think the expertise and experience of experts like yourself who contribute to, the transformative education that we speak of can contribute to the work of NGOs like CRISA Africa with the aim to provide mentorship and empowerment?
So I would say yes. So one of the ways that, well, the two ways that I think that people like myself or people like myself can do that. On the one hand, if I'm wearing my education hat, I provide you with the education that you need to go out into the world. So I give you the basic foundations, whether I'm teaching law, teaching life skills, or what have you. So that's on the one side. If I'm thinking about it through my business and my entrepreneurial hat, I'm also giving you leadership skills, life skills, and just basically teaching you how to survive. And not only that, equipping you and making sure that your skill set is at its best for the next organization or the next place that you go into. So I'll give you a very good example. So I fired one of my managers 2 months ago. And when I say fired, I just felt that she had outgrown the place and it was time for her to move on to a different organization, which happens. And I think perhaps we don't have that conversation enough. It's okay. People outgrow organizations, they outgrow places. And it's absolutely fine for you to go on to the next thing. I was at Reading for 5 years, University of Reading. I outgrew the place. That's the truth. I outgrew the place. I could see that there was no longer anything else that I could do in that place in those shoes. And so I sought a higher role. I sought something else that was going to be more rewarding. And that's what I did in my new establishment. So going back to my previous example, I then brought in one of the braiders to become a manager. And I'd been grooming her for some time. I wasn't actually grooming her for that place. I was grooming her for another branch that I'm planning on opening. And I just realized that actually bringing someone in who was a braider and elevating them to a manager, or at least within that management space, wasn't just for my benefit. It was also for her self-growth, for her self-development. It was also for her to be able to grow into that next level or that next stage of her life. So I think, using those two different examples, I'm hopeful that in those two different capacities, I'm able to contribute my little quota. One thing I would definitely say for any African owner, whether it's Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, it's not an easy feat to have staff on your payroll and pay that staff consistently every month. But it's not just about paying staff and making sure that salaries are paid, making sure that their well-being is also looked after, making sure that they are also growing as people, making sure that you are making them better for the next place that they go to. And I always say this to my staff: when you leave my place, the next place that you're going to, before you get to that next place, you must have taken some skills that you can say, when I was at this salon, this is the skill that I learned. This was how I improved myself. This is where I started from, and this is where I am. I have another staff member. She's probably one of the staff members I really, really like, but I don't tell her that, otherwise her head will get big. When she first came, she was good at braiding, but she wasn't perfect. And I gave her the opportunity and I said, look, if you don't learn this thing within the next 3 months, I'm going to fire you. I probably would not have fired her, but I knew that she needed that motivation. So I told her, I want you to go away and learn this. I want you to learn traditional plaiting, so Didi Olowo. I want you to learn this. I want you to master this. I want you to do X, Y, and Z. And you know that before that 3 months lapsed, she had mastered those things to the point that even me, and it's difficult to impress or shock me. Even me, I was impressed that, wow, she has really improved. And so she called me probably a month and a half ago. And she said, oh, Ma, I just want to speak to you that, please, can I have a few moments of your time? I've said, yes, what's the problem? I said, I just want to thank you because I've really learned I've improved. There was a way that she said it. She said it in Yoruba, so I'll just translate. She basically said that push that I gave her was what she needed to actually do the work and become better at what it was that she was doing. That without that, she would have been content with just doing the bare basic. And so she knows now that now she can handle clients by herself. She requires little to no supervision at all. And she's just doing a very fantastic job. The caveat I will put there is the candidate or the person in question has to be willing to. Because one thing I've learned about the workforce, generally speaking, and this is not endemic to the African space or the global North space, it's not endemic to that. You have to be willing, because nobody is coming to save you. And that's the truth. It's a hard truth to say, but nobody is coming to save you. Nobody should be willing to come and save you. You have to be willing to save yourself. If you want to get to that next stage and that next level, whether it's within academia or whether it's within business, you must be willing to do the work to get to that next level. When I was applying, sorry, I hope I'm still within the context of the question. When I was applying for a more senior role, there were certain things that I needed to do, and I needed to be able to demonstrate that I could do in order to step into that next level. If I didn't do those things, I did the bare minimum, I wouldn't have been able to. It might be different if I was a Caucasian woman. And I say this as a reality of England, generally speaking, because I know this is going on YouTube. So I'm trying to carefully use my words so that I don't offend anybody. But this is the reality of being Black, or being BAME, I should say. I'm not saying it's easier for a Caucasian woman. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that if you are from the BAME community, you're a woman, and then you're now like me, you are short. You have three things already fighting against you. Number one, you're Black. Number two, you're a woman. There's already discrimination there, whether you are Black, yellow, pink, or blue. And then you're now short. There's this perception. And that's why there was a study I was reading a couple of years ago about why women wear heels at work. Is to appear taller, is to appear more confident, is to appear more than sometimes you are. More visible, because you are trying to become more visible against your counterparts. So it's, about bringing that presence, that presence to that space. So yeah, I mean, I hope I've answered the question with those different examples.
Yes, I mean, the one point that stands out, I mean, a lot of points have stood out, but one that stood out for me is where you said you are contributing your own quota by impacting their lives and then helping them to become better, which reinforces your former point as when I asked you how you balance being a career person and a business person, and you said the training. And remember I did mention that when you train people, you're not only helping yourself, you're helping them become better. And now that we're talking about business, I think it will be a good time for me to, ask you one or two questions in line with your business interest. I know that you operate a beauty salon in Lagos, Nigeria. Yeah. How do you maintain a balance between your creativity? Because for you to have chosen that kind of business, which is a creative business, how do you maintain that balance between your creativity and the business side of your business?
Okay, so just for context, my mom had a beauty salon when I was younger, and it was that beauty salon that she used to send us to school and just, give us that foundation that my sister's a pharmacist, to give us that foundation that we needed. And one of the things that my mom, and I'm always so grateful to her, that she exposed me to, is the strategic and the operational side. So it's one thing for you to have a client in the chair, braid their hair. So as I braid, I weave, I do all of those things, yes. And I intentionally didn't even tell my staff initially, because I wanted them to think that this is just a educated madam. She doesn't used to do all these things. So the day that I actually started braiding a client's hair, they were shocked, but I digress. So it's one thing to have a client in the chair and do the braiding and do the braiding, do the tonguing, do the weaving. That's one side of it. The other side is, how do you get the customer or the client into the chair? That's where the creativity and the strategic side comes. So I think for me, one of the things that has helped as being in academia, and maybe even being in leadership as the Associate Dean for Global Engagement, it has given me that ability to look at a whole picture and look at where the gaps are and look at what needs to be filled in. So with my business, you have a shop, you want to provide a service. This is where your shop is located. How do you reach the people in this community? What are the different initiatives that you can do to reach them? And so, for example, for us, some of the things that we do, so for Valentine's Day last month, I developed the strategic plan that we used for that month. give offers to clients, reward returning clients, give clients a gift, because it's not just about getting new clients into your chair. It's also about retaining the clients that you have. I didn't get all of these things. I mean, I learned some of them from my mom, but some of them I also learned from the workplace. How do you retain a relationship with another university and make sure that they're still interested in sending your students? What initiatives are you, bringing to the table? What is making them want to come back?
Yeah.
Those are the same types of skills that you can implement into the business place, because your average consumer is looking at you that, yes, you're a business, but why should I patronize you? Why should I come to you and I shouldn't go to another salon, which is 10 minutes down the way? What makes your salon stand out? And so I always put myself into the position of the consumer. And when I put myself into the position of the consumer, I start asking these questions. Okay, what do I need to do? Okay, how do I, if I'm a client, why would I choose this shop instead of this shop? What is different about these two businesses? What stands out? It can be something so basic as, oh, when I sit down and I'm in the chair, they offer me water, they offer me Coke, they offer me tea. It's not just your average tea, it's tea from England. And then they give you biscuits on top. That small and singular thing that you think is small is actually something that you can use to retain and keep customers in the seat. And that's where the creativity and the business side, if you like, starts to roll or converge into one. So it's about putting yourself in the client seat, making yourself the client for that period of time, and then figuring out, okay, this is what, if I was a client, this is what I would want. This is what is attractive to me. And then when you're able to answer those questions, it's easier for you to know what your business needs, and then, run with it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Adeyemo. That was really insightful. Going forward to my next question, can you share some key lessons you've learned from running a business that has shaped your entrepreneurial mindset? Because I know that as an entrepreneur, it can be very easy sometimes to give up. But then we look back into our journey, and then we get those key lessons, and you said, you know what, I'm going forward. I'm not going to give up. And that's how our mindset is, shaped. So what key lessons have you learned that has shaped your mindset over the years?
That's not a difficult question. The first thing is the God factor. And I know that almost if I say every Nigerian, most people will say it. The God factor for me is the first and key, I won't say only lesson, but the main thing. Making sure that you are seeking your guidance, seeking your counsel, seeking everything from God. I was moving some things from a room a couple of weeks ago. And I used to do these, I have a jar that I use at the beginning I put it at the beginning of the year and then use it throughout the year. And what I essentially do is to write down what my targets are, my goals are for the year, and I put it in the jar. So when it gets to December or maybe the following year, I would then open it and say, what are the things I were able to achieve? And that helps me plan for the subsequent year. But I remember for this particular year, I actually wrote down a list of goals that I wanted to achieve. And I said, God, I need your guide. I'm just, saying it off memory. I was saying, God, I need your guidance on this. I really want to open this salon. This was in 2022. I said, I really want to open a beauty salon in Lagos. I really want to get promoted to senior lecturer. And there were a few other goals, personal achievements that I had put there. And it was only until I read it when I was doing some moving a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I think it was last week. I was like, oh, wow, I actually wrote this down. It was like a petition to God, and I said to God, I want this thing. So for me, the God factor is very important. There is no business, I would say, that is extremely successful that does not have that God factor in. It's about asking God for guidance, saying to God, I'm very religious, I would say. Asking God for that guidance, asking God for what are the next steps I should take, asking the Holy Spirit for that direction. And even if you're not a spiritual person, like you're a Christian, at least meditating, spending time reflecting, thinking through things, not rushing into anything. Anyone that does a business in Nigeria, especially if you're not there all the time, let me tell you, the God factor is going to be your core and major pillar that you're going to hold on. because doing business in Nigeria is not for the faint-hearted, regardless of the business that you do, whether it's you're selling bags or shoes in your hair salon, you're providing a service, even if it doesn't matter what that business is, anything in Nigeria which requires human resources in Nigeria requires the God factor, because nobody will hold your business for you like you will hold that business. And the way you pray more, and pray even some more. If you think you have prayed, go back to the drawing board and pray again. So for me, the God factor has been the main thing in terms of running it. But I think also running a business in Nigeria, for me as a person, has also shaped me in different ways. It's taught me resilience. I'd say I'm pretty resilient, generally speaking, but I think it's taught me resilience. It's taught me adaptability. I find that when I go to Nigeria, the way that I interact is very different from my expectations and how I interact when I'm in England. And that's not meant to be an offense or to cause any disrespect, not at all. It's just that the expectations are slightly different. And once you put that into your mind and you realize that, okay, the expectations I have here, because people just do things and it's done, it requires a bit more hand-holding when you're in Nigeria, especially if you are a perfectionist or you are somebody who wants it done to a particular standard. So I'd also say that. I'd also say planning is very important. The business environment in Nigeria is not very stable. I think anybody can say that. You have your highs, you have your lows. 30 December, for example, is an extremely high. And so because of that, what you find is a lot of businesses will spend the leading months up to that December planning singularly for the December period, to make sure that they're maximizing on their staff. Make sure they're maximizing on their staff, making sure that they are fully stocked up with things, just planning, because you can just never tell. I know that when I did the my first December with the store, we did well, but I kept in mind that it's a new business. And because it's a new business, it's to be expected that there are other established businesses there. When I got to the next December, I kept that in mind and planned and prepared again towards that. Now that December is coming again, because before we know it will be December time, I've already started thinking, although those thoughts are in the gestation period, I started thinking about, okay, planning towards December, I need to start thinking about this. I need to start thinking about that. I need to start thinking about the number of staff. I need to start thinking about a range or a number of different things, during that, to be able to achieve those goals for the December period. So I think the God factor is important. Planning is also important, but planning and also being flexible, because the business environment changes all the time.
Okay. On the flip side now, can you let us know what challenges you've also faced as an educationalist and how you overcome them to succeed?
My biggest challenge, I would say, is balancing my research, balancing administrative responsibilities, and also balancing trying to have a personal life in the midst of it all. So I'm just about finishing my third book, and it's something I would have probably finished earlier, but because of the different tasks I was trying to balance, it made it a little bit more difficult. So I would say, just trying to not prioritize, but manage those different tasks, because each area that I've mentioned now requires time. It requires focus. It requires dedication. And so managing those things, sometimes, we're only human. They can be overwhelming. We had a marking deadline 2 weeks ago. And for the first time in 10 years that I've been teaching, I was not sure that I was going to meet that deadline. And that's so unlike me, because I'm a stickler for time. I'm a stickler for things being done at the right time, as they should time. I also recognize that the students also need their grades. They have expectations. If we tell them you have to submit a piece of work by this time, it's a legitimate expectation on their part that you will also send the work back at this time. So it's also, being able to recognize that. I mentioned earlier about delegating and delegating to other people. And that is something that I've really had to spend time trying to make sure I improve. And that's a skill for me. And that's because I like to have a hands-on approach with almost anything and everything that I do. And so this idea of delegation previously did not come natural to me because I just felt it's okay if I just do it myself and I'll just do it, I'll just get it done. But that itself can be overwhelming. So I'd say the challenges have been balancing those different things. So my research, my teaching, my administrative responsibilities and what have you, but also just realizing that it's okay to delegate. You don't have to do everything. I don't have to prove anything more to anyone else or even to myself. So just having that mindset that it's okay to delegate and they will get the job done. And even in that delegation, it's also given people the opportunity to prove themselves, whether it's to you or to themselves, and to develop those skills. But they can't do that if you hug all the responsibilities and you don't delegate to anyone. So.
That's really correct. And even just on a lighter note, the way you explain and then give us context into your life, it makes me appreciate the time that you've given us today, because I know you have a lot of things on your hands, and it's such a sacrifice for you to be here today. Once again, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
One question I have here is many young people nowadays quickly abandon, the academic path to success in a bid to make money, liberate themselves financially. And you can't blame them. Many people have responsibilities. We know some people even are responsible for, sponsoring their siblings through school and a lot of other responsibilities. However, this has negatively affected the percentage of youths who are interested in education either as a career path or as a tool to reaching their goals. And this has then brought this slang that people often say, school na scam, school na scam. So what is your take on this idea that school na scam?
I completely understand the frustration because, and I say this because I can say it from a position of privilege. And I think if you have the opportunity to go to school, fantastic. Definitely embrace that opportunity and take it with both hands. Not everybody has that privilege and not everybody has that opportunity. Like you rightly said, there are some people who have responsibilities. There are some people who just going to school is just not on the top of the agenda right now. And I can completely understand that. I would say school is not a scam. I say this as an educator because obviously I have a thing for school. I love school. School is not a scam. But I also appreciate the frustration, and I'll give you a couple of examples. I also appreciate the frustration that is behind, I've been to school, there is no job. And I'll give you a typical example. I was in Nigeria about 10 years ago with my family, and we had gone to my hometown, Oyo State. So we had gone to Ibadan. And we met somebody on the roadside selling jollof rice. This guy had just finished, well, I'm sure it's very true because of other reasons. This guy was a doctor and he could not find a job. And so to ensure that he was not just at home sitting on, I am Dr. So-and-so, this guy was selling jollof rice on the main road. Now, the reality of it is, how would you now say school is not a scam? Yes, he has gone to the school, he has gotten all the degrees, he has even gotten the doctor title. But there's also that recognition that there's no job and I need to make money. I have responsibilities. I have a mother at home, I have a father at home. My other siblings also need to go to school. So I get that. I completely understand that frustration. And when you look at the infrastructure in Nigeria, sadly, we prioritize education and it's a good thing. But we don't prioritize making sure that after education, there are jobs available for these people who have gone to school. And that's why you see all of these people, to use the Nigerian phrase, japa. That's why most of them are leaving Nigeria to go to different countries to seek better opportunities. And when they are seeking those opportunities, one of the things that they will first want to know is there an opportunity for a job after that. Because if there's no opportunity of a job after that, chances of them really wanting to go to that particular country is very slim. So I definitely understand when people say school is a scam. But I feel that they're saying school is a scam because they're looking beyond to say, if I do this school, what is the guarantee that I'll get a job in this space? What is the guarantee? I mean, I saw it in law school. I saw it in law school with a lot of students, some who finished and got very good grades. Not all of them got a job. And it's surprising because you would think that this person made it first class or they made it 2-1. Why don't they have a job? So I understand that frustration there. I would say that school is not a scam. You can do so much by just having that right foundation and that right, because that foundation underpins or undergirds everything else that you would do. So I definitely would say that school is not a scam. I have a staff member, a lot of potential, very bright, very willing, very able. And she confided in me. I will think about how to put this. And she was saying that she's not, well, this is a previous member of staff, so it's okay. She was saying that she doesn't think that school is visible for her anymore. And why? Because of the circumstances of her family, she doesn't feel like she's able to go to school, because if she goes, her other siblings are also in school. She felt that it would be so much of a financial burden on her family that she really didn't want to put them through that. So I definitely understand the frustration behind it. I still would say that school is not a scam. The real issue is how it's structured. Schools need to also do a better job at not just teaching the theoretical part, but also teaching the practical part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that leads me to say, that, polytechnics now, although they've been looked down upon, they have their own purpose. Because from what I understand, polytechnics were made to be hands-on institutions where people come out of there as, professional bricklayers, professional builders, professionals in those, really hands-on, how do I call this now? Is it career paths or vocations? So
Vocation skills.
yeah, so and that leads me to the point that institutions need to also go back to the rudiments, improve on the value that they are delivering, so that not only will school, as it seems, appear more beneficial to the people that are going there, it would
More
also
attractive,
leave
yeah.
that, impact. Thank you, Doctor. Moving forward, many African youths identify as multi-potentialites, and this takes me back to your statements about being a lawyer is not the only thing I've been called to do. African youths identify as being multi-potentialites in that we want to, and we believe that we are able to oversee one or more projects simultaneously. What is your opinion on this? Do you believe a person should explore one opportunity before divesting into another? How does it even affect your effectiveness and efficiency, in your opinion?
So I think I'm the perfect example for that. And I say that with so much humility. Because I do a lot of different things. A lot of different things are not even in my bio. All legal, because I know this is going on YouTube. But I have my hands in a lot of different businesses. As long as it's legal and it's something I feel I can do, then it's something I will at least explore. I don't have anything against people managing different projects at the same time. I think it's a skill if you're able to do it, but the focus is key. The key is focus. I beg your pardon. And it's important that not just that you have focus on one thing and you keep that focus there, but that you master that thing. So one of the things that I am hoping to do at some point is to branch out into different businesses in Nigeria. But I need to have built a solid business for a period of time, have mastered the art of that business before I even think about either expanding or digressing into something else. So being a master at that one business, knowing your craft, because knowing your craft is very important. It gives you that strong foundation for any other business or any other thing that you're going to do moving forward. But it's really, really important that you have that focus because that's the key part that's going to help you to go into other things. And just having that stability, really, I would say, having that stability in that one area, stability and having that confidence, because one thing that academia has taught me is having that confidence to be able to stand in a classroom of 500 students and teach them about financial crime. If I can stand in a classroom of 500 students, it was easy for me to go to University of Lagos and deliver a talk to also 500 students. It's going to be easy for me to talk to people about, I want to rent this shop. This was the best deal that you can give me. So being able to master, the art of whatever it is that you want to go into, but you must first, at the very core, have focus. Master the craft that you are going into, get into the craft, master that craft and be a genius at it before you start thinking of other things. Because even if they are completely different industries, your focus is what's going to help you do well in other areas. Your focus is what's going to help you excel. Your focus is what's going to earn you that respect. If you are seen as somebody who does something half-heartedly or doesn't really put their whole heart and soul into it, you lose that credibility when it comes to other things. And life is such a small thing, or a small place. You can meet different people at different parts, completely different areas, but if they know you that you're not really someone that's focused, you just have all these different things you're doing, they won't even take you seriously. So that's
right. You have to be focused. I always tell my friends that no matter what you do, no matter where you are, you have to leave a culture of excellence behind. And that's where focus, bless you.
Thank you.
That's where focus comes in. Because when you're focused, you're definitely excellent. Like the Bible says about Daniel, that Daniel had an excellent spirit and it found favor in the sight of the king. So with that excellence in everything you do, the sky is your starting point.
And I love that Bible verse, because it's something that it's a watchword for me. Anything that you find me doing, just know that I'm going to do it excellently. If it's not excellent, my hand is not there. And so when you have that in your mind, and you have that in your mindset, and you use that as your template for things, you can't really go wrong.
Doctor, how do you see the future of the beauty industry evolving? And how do you think private businesses, I beg your pardon, can catalyze social impact?
That's an interesting one, and I'll tell you why. The beauty industry is evolving in a lot of different ways. Number one, we are moving towards a more tech-induced, if you like, kind of era. People are more likely to want to book their appointments online and book ahead before they come to your salon or come to your spa or come to wherever it is, whatever business it is. We have this new software that we've started using in the shop, at the salon rather. And honestly, it has really, I'm trying to think of the word, it has really transformed the way that the salon business has worked for me. I can go onto the app. The app is called Splice. I can go onto the app, have a look at the clients that are booked for this one day, have a look at what the sales are, have a look at what the expenses are. Everything is just cataloged and is easy accessible for me. So I'd say, at least from that particular angle, in terms of the evolution, if you like, of the beauty industry, people are also more likely to want to book their appointments in advance. They don't want to get there and sit down and have to start waiting. Can you do my hair? Can you not do my hair? For the December period, a lot of our clients I just got back and I'm just in the country for a few days or for a few weeks. All of them booked their appointments beforehand. And even the clients that we have in Nigeria, many of them will call beforehand and say, I'm thinking of coming on this day. Do you have a slot? I'm willing to pay a deposit. So I think it's this idea of technology and the impact it's having on the beauty industry. And I'm not just saying that for the salon, I'm saying that for even spa places, anything beauty related. I think technology is definitely a powerful driver. I think people are also looking for a good customer experience, which sadly is not always the case when you go to places in Nigeria. You don't always have a good customer experience there, whether it's a restaurant whether it's a salon, whether it's a spa. So I think the idea of improving the customer experience, recognizing that they are not just in your chair and paying money, they are expecting an experience so that they will come back. So I think the beauty industry is evolving because there's that recognition, I beg your pardon, of improving the customer experience and ensuring customer retention.
Thank you very much, Doctor. For leaders who will be inspired by your achievements and also seek to have a successful family, what is your advice for them to navigate life and the challenges, the intrigues of pursuing a career and family life?
I was listening to something a few months ago. Is this former CEO of PepsiCo, and she was talking about how do you balance these different competing areas of your life. And she said something that was quite profound. And she essentially said, it's no way for you to achieve that perfect balance. You just need to prioritize what is more important to you. So you prioritize and you work your way down the list. And when you work your way down the list, you then use that to set boundaries. It's important to have a good support system behind you, because when all else fails, your support system is the crux. It's what holds you up. It's what happens. It's my support system that when I go to work and I come back home, it's my support system that really see me after I've had a really hard day at work. When I go to the shop and maybe sales are not what I thought it was going to be, it's my support system that will say, oh, have you thought about this, Fola? Why don't you try this? So I think having a strong support system, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's colleagues, I think it's about that. And also recognizing something that I learned actually from someone I don't really like very much now. Life is not about doing things alone. You are not meant to be alone in this life. Life is not, God has not put you there so that you can just be there by yourself and just do life. Life is not supposed to be like that. You have people around you, whether it's helpers of destiny, whether it's your family, whether God has put someone in your life for a period of time and only for that period of time, recognizing the value of that person for that time that they're in your life, and also recognizing that life is not meant to be done alone. You can lean on people. But it goes back to something I said earlier. The person has to also be willing to lean on the person. You have to be willing to want to do better. You have to be willing to want to explore life and just not stay at that same level. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody cares if you're feeling sorry for yourself, because everybody, believe it or not, is dealing with issues. Everybody has what they are dealing with. Everybody has what they are going through. So you have to wake up and make that decision for yourself and say, well, actually, I recognize that everybody is going through their own different issues. I recognize that people are going through different things. Life is not meant to be alone, or you're not supposed to do alone. Who are the people that I have around me that I can reach out to, that I can lean on? So my advice is prioritize things. It is possible to have both. It is possible to have a career, a successful career at that. It is very possible to have a family life, to have a husband, to have a child. It is very possible. You just need to be able to prioritize those things and what is more important for you.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. And in terms of priority, to be honest, I think that's a very cogent advice and something to apply. And when you're prioritizing, people also need to remember that priorities change as we progress in life. I mean, as a woman, when I prioritize, for instance, if I'm going to prioritize my education now, it doesn't mean I'm going to prioritize my education next year when I start having kids, or when I start having to focus on other interests and all that. So we need to know that as time progresses, you're perfectly allowed to prioritize according to what is in front of you. And that's what young people should also learn to understand. You are allowed not to be 100% available to all of your goals at the same time.
Yes, I agree. And the prioritizing part, it's just so important. You don't have to do everything at the same time. We go through different seasons in life. In this season, what is more important to you? I went through a season where research and publishing were the only things on my mind, and everything else, I just shut out the noise.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I published 3 books in that year.
Wow.
I did a couple of these things, and because I knew that this was my target, this was my focus, and these were the things I wanted to do. So it's okay to prioritize. I think sometimes we're so hard on ourselves, and you think, oh, we're not supposed to, but it's okay to prioritize. It's really okay to do that. It's really okay to do that.
Definitely. Well, Doctor, I have come to the end of my questions. Thank you so much. I mean, personally, I've learned a lot of things from you today, and I'm going to go back to apply some of those points to my own life.
I'm pleased.
Doctor, is there anything you would like to share with African youths? Advice, a story, anything you'd like to share? Just rounding up, like your own personal points, just to get them, motivated.
Any dream that you have is valid. And I've taken that, I can't remember which actress it was that said it, but all of your dreams are valid. Whether you want to be in law, in business, social media influencing. I was still having that conversation with my cousin this morning. Social media influencing, sometimes I wonder if I'm in the wrong profession, because when I see what some of their rate cards, I'm like, you're going to charge 5 million naira for a 5-minute appearance? I think I'm in the wrong profession. So it doesn't matter what profession or what area you find yourself in. I would say all of your dreams are valid, but also remember a couple of things. Number one, nobody is coming to save you. If you want to do well, and you want to do very well, and you want to become the best at what you are doing, you better get onto it, get onto the journey and start the journey and start it well. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody owes you anything. Your parents owe you education, shelter, what else? Food and drink, all these things. They don't owe you anything beyond that. Once they have done what they need to do, that is it. They don't owe you a big fancy mansion. They don't owe you the latest Range Rover. They don't owe you any of those things. And you are not entitled to those things. It's the hard truth, but you are not entitled to those things. What you are entitled to is the basic education that they give you, whether that education is in England, whether that education is in Nigeria, whether that education is in China. They owe you that education if they can afford to. They owe you shelter to keep you safe, keep you in a place that is safe and convenient if they can afford to. They owe you food and drink so that you're not malnourished if they can afford to. Beyond that, nobody owes you anything. And I think there is this, sorry to say, there is this very sad mentality of entitlement that a lot of, I'm going to say African kids, because I don't see it in other places actually, that a lot of them have. You're not entitled to anything. Nobody is coming to save you. If you want to be the best at what you're doing, my dear, you better get onto the journey and start it so that you can be the very best. So I would say, in terms of that, stay curious, stay resilient. It's never a smooth journey for anyone. And actually, the beauty of it is the fact that it's not a smooth journey. It's the fact that it's not a smooth journey. You learn so many different things. A lot of people see me and they think, oh, she just had a smooth journey. It has not been that smooth. There were some menial jobs that I did to put myself through the PhD. Those who are close to me, they know those jobs that I did. I'm not ashamed of those jobs because they were legal jobs, but I'm happy to do it because I knew I was looking at the goal ahead and I was saying to myself, this is where I want to get to. I don't have the means right now. I'm not willing to sell my body and I'm not willing to do anything illegal. These are the jobs I'll need to pick up to be able to achieve those goals. Because people just look at you and they think, oh, she has it all put together. They don't remember the struggle. And that's because I had the mentality that nobody owes you anything. Nobody's coming to save you. So you better save yourself if you want to do well. Shalom.
Shalom. All your dreams are valid.
They are.
Nobody is coming to save you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor.
You're very welcome.
The end of the interview. Just want to appreciate you one more time.
Thank you very much.
And we hope to stay in touch.
Yes, definitely.
Please have
Thank you so much. Have a lovely afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Take care.